Hey guys, it's Mike, your host of Craft Beer Storm. How are you doing today? Also, brewer owner at Beara Brewing Company in glorious Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The weather's getting better. It's getting a little warmer, which is good. It's just going to get hot all of a sudden, like boom. I know everything's blooming, which is great, but it's not good for allergies. But you can't have everything, whatever. But hey, we got today we have another special guest. We're continuing the Craft Brewers Conference series. We have Bart Watson, who's the Chief Economist at the Brewers Association. I just, I made a request. I said, hey, can we get Bart on? They're like, yeah. I'm like, awesome. So we got him in a room, and he's doing some great things with the Brewers Association, predictions for what's trending in the beer industry, and looking at a lot of data. But good conversation. And hey, just one second. If you got a chance, please go on to iTunes. Give us a rating. Give us a review if you like our podcast. That's the only way we get up in rankings. Rating and review takes a minute. Just go on, click that 5-star button, and everything's okay. All right, so now let's get to Bart. Here we go. Hey, I'm here at the CBC, and I have the privilege of talking to Bart Watson, who's the BA Brewers Association Chief Economist. How you doing, Bart?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you could carve out the time to speak to me. So just basically, I saw your presentation this morning. It was awesome on the state of the craft beer industry, and you're kind of like Alan Greenspan.
I'll take it.
Do you remember when Alan Greenspan was like the Fed chairman? He's like, all right, so what's Bart say? Okay, so I'm glad that you came on, and I want to try to educate people, because usually this podcast is for everybody, just people who don't maybe drink watery beer. They do not really know about craft beer. So it's great to have you on and explain it. So you're chief economist of the Brewers Association. How did you, what's your history? How'd you?
I got a PhD. I was a professor for a couple of years, and then just by sheer luck, I was doing research for a lecture on excise taxes, and I found the Brewers Association site. And whenever I tell this story, I have to give credit to my wife. Because she, when I applied and got the job, she was the one who said, that's a great job. You need to take that job. We're going to move to Boulder. Working in beer sounds great. And she was right, and it's been a great fit. So.
Is that where you live now, in Boulder?
Yep. Yeah, we're based in Boulder, Colorado. I live just outside in Louisville. It's great to be here, but A, because it's a good city, and B, because it's a really good beer town.
And where were you before the Brewers Association? Where were you working?
My most recent stop was at the University of Iowa. I was a visiting assistant professor. I taught a variety of economics and politics classes on the EU, on health politics. It was actually a really fun time to be teaching it, because it was during the initial Obamacare debate. So Iowa, and then grad school before that.
So excellent. So, the question I ask everybody is, everybody says that craft beer is kind of a bubble. What is your opinion in terms of that bubble?
Well, I would come down pretty sharply that it's not a bubble.
Right.
What we're seeing is growth driven by consumer demand. That's the opposite of a bubble, where you get this irrational exuberance and people are building about a future that doesn't exist.
Greenspan.
Yeah, very much. Yeah. So. And I think what we've seen is that we have seen companies that have overbuilt, and many of them have had challenges, have gone into bankruptcy, have had to restructure, have been acquired. But most breweries are really small. They're serving their local community, and they're building out because people want to buy their beers. They like fuller flavor, they like variety, and they like what craft brings.
Right, exactly. And it's I think the big trend is towards hyper local, right, and local.
Exactly. And, one of the statistics that always surprises people when you give it is that 75% of the breweries in the country, collectively, you add them all together, they sell less than 1 out of 200 beers in the U.S.
Wow.
So that's where I think when people see that brewery number, they assume it must be a bubble. But most of those breweries, they're not a regional craft brewer. They're not packaging much. They're not distributing. They're not competing in the same way that a lot of breweries are. They're hyper-local. They're serving their neighborhood. They're serving, their town if it's a small town. So I think that's where the difference is and the disconnect is.
I think the regional brewers are getting really challenged because there's a lot they're like kind of in between. They're not a massive brewery like a Coors or a Miller Coors or AB. And then you have your smaller breweries, which are taking market share away from them, and they're really getting squeezed.
I'd completely agree. As we saw in the industry statistics this morning, that's the slowest growth part of the market. Brew pubs and microbreweries continue to grow very successfully, and regionals, I think you put it very well, are really squeezed in between these largest multinational corporations who have tons of resources, who can brew at massive scale, and a lot of small, local, nimble players. And that doesn't mean every regional's not doing well. Some of them, if they're really tightly concentrated or they're doing something really special, are still seeing growth. But as a category, it's tough out there. There's a lot of choices, and the people who are broadly distributed are having to fight in a lot of different markets.
Yeah, that's awesome. It is a challenge. Well, yeah, the whole beer industry, it's a roller coaster, and you never know what the trends are. And I saw a slide, and we were talking about it, which is kind of refreshing, is that people want more crisp beers and darker beers. I mean, I'm a brewery in New Hampshire. I'm a 7-barrel brewery, but we do everything with the Irish barley base, and our stout sells very well in the tap room. But if I bring the stout to a bar or a restaurant, they're like, "Oh, it's dark beer. I can't, what are you doing with dark beer?" I'm like, well, now I can point to this and say, look, the trends are that people are looking for dark beers, or like a lager. I would think crisp would be kind of a lager or pilsner.
Yeah, and we did this consumer survey in a way that wasn't necessarily style specific, because a lot of people who are, as they're getting into beer, they don't necessarily know the difference between a pilsner or some other kind of beer. But if you give them those flavor characteristics, crisp or dark or roasty or malty, they generally know what those are. And yeah, we've seen, one of the great things about craft is as its demographic has grown and we've seen more breweries, I think there's lots of things that people are looking for. So it's not just saying this style or that style, but certainly we've seen craft swing back towards some of those lighter styles, Pilsner, Helles, Kolsch, blonde, golden ales. And I think that's a natural evolution of craft as its demographic ages, as it tries to get more of the wider beer market, which is still mostly lager and light lager. But yeah, there's still a lot of opportunities in maltier beers too. Obviously, hops have driven it a lot, and hops and IPA continue to be the strongest growing style within craft if you're looking in volume terms. But I always try to get brewers to think outside of that, and in particular to their place. Your tap room, your city is going to be different than the national market, and people need to be attuned to that.
And the local community, yeah. And we touched upon the hops, like you said. I mean, do you think the IPA is ever going to slow down, or because everybody's just looking for IPA? Even people don't know what an IPA is. Like, I want your IPA. Like, they don't know what it is, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, what do you think about IPAs? It seems like it just keeps going.
Part of the reason it keeps going is that it really, I've been saying this for years, it's not a single style anymore. It's a platform for innovation, and people are putting hops where they haven't put hops before and using them in different ways. Here at the conference, the New England IPA seminar was a packed house, and in many ways that's a very different style than classic American, piney, bitter West Coast IPA. I think one of the reasons we continue to see IPA grow, and I think one reason it has run room, is that brewers have been really innovative in taking the IPA concept and breaking it apart and putting it together in new ways. And, we see those hazy, juicy beers, they have a different demographic. They're bringing in people to IPA who maybe wouldn't have started there before because they are a little bit less bitter. They have a little bit more sweetness. They're able to do some stuff, but with that hop characteristic that other beers wouldn't. So it's hard to know when trends end and when IPA will slow down. But because it continues to innovate, and now we've seen the other pendulum swing with brewed IPA, I think it has some run room just because brewers are doing so many different things with it.
Right, the brewed IPA is very interesting. It's a new kind of style. I mean, it used to be sours like a couple of years ago, like everybody was sour, but those kind of fallen away. And now it's more, but I think you said last year, like watch out for the lagers and the pilsners, because those are going to be, and it kind of is happening.
Yeah, I think it makes sense too. And, I'm a big believer that, the economic and demographic factors that underlie this are really important. And, one of the things about craft is we had a whole bunch of 21 to 34-year-olds who got into craft. And now they're getting a little bit older. They're settling down. They're having kids. They're looking for things that are a little bit lower ABV or a little more sessionable, maybe a little bit lighter on calories as they age and have to watch their weight a little bit more. So I think now that they've developed that connection to brands from small and independent brewers, it's going to be natural that they're going to trade down from double IPAs, and they'll still drink those, but, less frequently, to things that are lighter. Again, Pilsners, Helles, Kolsch, that kind of stuff.
And you touched upon the light. I went to the brew talks last night with Sam Calgione was there, but they talked about Michelob Ultra. Mm-hmm. It's like they're selling millions of barrels of this stuff because people are trending towards it. It kind of, the way they market it is like for fit people, you want a lighter beer, lower calories. So Sam actually for Dogfish, he's doing a low-cal beer, like exactly the same calories of Michelob Ultra. So and that I think is the trend.
Yeah, I think there's big opportunities there. I mean, one of the things, and I'll steal a metaphor from Jim Koch, who for years has talked about the leaky bucket of light lager, and we continue to see that. The biggest brands, the light lager brands, they're losing a lot of volume, and there are going to be customers who still care about that, who do want beer but are watching their calories, like the light lager for that reason. And I think craft brewers can do that, and hopefully now with some punchier flavors. I'm really excited to try that Dogfish Head beer and see if it can get some of those Dogfish Head flavors into a beer with lower calories, because that's an occasion that consumers are going to look for.
I did not try it, but he said it was an IPA, and he's doing really good things with hops, so I think it'd probably be... He also did what I tried last night, the Super 8, which has 8 superfood groups. But he says he can't say that it's healthy for you, otherwise he'll get in trouble.
Yeah, brewers aren't allowed to.
With the
allowed
FDA,
to do that,
get in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but also like you see in terms of breweries, there's a lot of competition because the prices have remained the same. And that's what I feel. Like I tried to get into canning, and I did the cans, and they got them out there, but I had to be competitive with others. Mm-hmm. And since I'm such a smaller brewery, my margin was really strangled. Whereas other breweries with larger systems can produce a lot more and then work on their margin. But do you see like kind of the prices for those leveling off or staying the same?
Well, and I'll stay out of giving specific price predictions since, we as trade association can't give price advice, but we certainly saw in the aggregated data slower pricing growth last year. We saw 1.4% off-premise and 1.6% on-premise, or maybe I got those flipped around, but it was about 1.5% pricing growth, which that's slow. I mean, craft was generally seeing about 3% pricing growth, year over year before. So I think that is a sign of the competition, and brewers are afraid to take up price because it might mean lower volume. And, that's one reason I think we're seeing a lot of them focus on their tap room and their brew pub because the margins are better there and they can control pricing more.
The margin in a tap room is absolutely the best, yeah. It's really great. And so we're trying to drive more people into our tap room as well. And well, breweries are capital intensive, and what another thing you were talking about is like since it's so capital intensive, maybe brewers should be more creative and maybe do contract brewing, maybe just to start. A lot of breweries, like these guys, are just getting a ton of money from investors, buying 30-barrel systems, making a lot of beer, and then it doesn't sell, and then they're like, all right, what are we going to do? They get in arguments with the distributors. And then they don't make any money. The bank comes in and repossesses the equipment. That's pretty much over and over and over again. So do you think brewers could kind of try to test the waters first?
I think that's certainly one option. And there's lots of different models. I mean, contract brewing, pairing up with other breweries and doing that alternating proprietorship model where, you share the system. We're seeing more of that.
Is that really? Can you do that? I didn't even know you were...
You can do it, and state by state might be different. Yeah. But, yeah, you certainly can do it. The federal level allows it. It's called an alternating proprietorship. And, you physically take ownership of the brew house when you're brewing on it, and then they do when they're brewing on it, and often then we're seeing brewers really just build out shared spaces, and so they have a place where their fermenters are so they can keep their tax records and somebody else has their fermenters. I think my point would be that there's a lot of options, and when there's a lot of excess capacity out there, why invest in new stainless when there's lots of stainless that's already sitting idle? I mean, that's kind of economics 101, that, you don't want to be spending on capital equipment if there's capital equipment that you can use for cheaper than what you're spending on.
I know, and I have my smaller brewery, and, I built the brand, and I did what I had to do there, but I'd like to take it to the next level, but I really don't want to buy all this kind of stainless. I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, maybe some contract brew for it, but I like that thing about the sharing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. I don't know if they allow... I'm from New Hampshire, so I'm not sure if they do that in New Hampshire or not, but probably not. But
yeah, they might. Yeah, I wish I knew all 50 state laws. But yeah, I mean, certainly that's a way, and we see a lot of people dip their toe in the water that way. And at some point, when they see that they can consistently sell the volume that they wanted to get to, that's when they make the jump. And it's, at that point, too, it's going to be easier to show investors, like, oh, I'm going to be able to pay for this because I've consistently sold this amount of beer.
That's awesome. Now, do you use any, like when you do your predictions for what's going to sell, I mean, do you have any models that you use, or it's just basically data that you get from brewers, and then you kind of extrapolate that data and look at trends, or how does that work?
It's a little bit of both. Certainly we try to do more data analysis. It's a lot easier to look back and say what's happening or what's happened than to predict forward. But we do use some models. Some of them are borrowed from other industries. So one I look at a lot is specialty coffee. It's an industry that actually looks a lot like craft brewing. It's transitioned not only to a higher price point, but also one that has a service component. We've moved to local coffee shops and local roasting. So that's one where you can kind of pencil out some of the trends and you can see what that curve has looked like in terms of the number of shops or the market. So we do try to build some forward-looking models to better inform our members, but forecasting is hard, and we try not to do too many predictions because we don't want to lead members down the wrong path. So tend to err on giving them the analysis of what's going on in the market now and let them make their own decisions.
Like
about
actual trends, instead of trying to predict stuff, and then it doesn't work out, and then everybody's, it's a problem. So, you talked also about that independent craft brewers, the logo, the seal.
Yeah.
How has that been working out, I guess, for breweries and in terms of just getting people to understand what craft beer really is?
Yeah, we think it's working great so far. Obviously, obviously, you know it's going to be a process when you introduce a mark like this. You're not going to tell everybody overnight what it is or get every brewer to adopt it overnight. If you already package, you're not going to go out and buy all new packaging. You're going to run through the packaging you already had. But more than 4,000 breweries have signed our licensing agreement. We're seeing thousands and thousands of them put it on packaging, even as simple as putting it on their growlers or crowlers in their brewery or brew pub. And I think we're starting to see the consumer awareness of it too. Particularly amongst the most committed craft drinkers, more and more are saying that they have seen it, that they know what it stands for, that they see those positive values associated with it. So in the long run, we understand not everyone is going to care about this, just in the same way not everyone cares about organic products. But we think there's a big chunk of craft drinkers who want to know and who will make some percentage of their purchase decisions based on it, that if they have a choice between a truly independent craft brewer and one that's not, that they're going to deviate toward the independent one.
They say, and there's a really, really big blurry line now because the larger entities are creating these shell entities that are buying things, and their name is really not plastered all over the business that they bought, and it's kind of a bit of a deception, I think, in terms of, and so having a seal like this is probably a clearer way for someone to just kind of take a look at it.
Exactly. It's a way to transmit consumer information. It's my job to track all of this and to know who's been acquired by who, but most craft drinkers, they, may care about this, but they're not going to follow the industry trends. They're not going to know when someone's acquired by a multinational brewery. So it's a really simple way to transmit information and to tell other people. So, one of the data points that we used when we were thinking about this is that drinkers and shoppers aren't the same. So a lot of people go and buy beer for somebody else in the household. And, if my wife's going and she's going to buy the beer, or I'm going to buy it for her, and one of us cares about this, that's an easy thing to say. Oh, buy an IPA from one of the breweries we like, and make sure it has that seal on it so we know it's an independent beer. So we just think it's a good way to get consumers information. That's something that people increasingly care about more. They want to know the calories, they want to know the ABV, they want to know where it's made, they want to know what the dog of the brewer's name is. And independence is a part of that, and we think there's a good, easy way that consumers can quickly tell when they're looking at a shelf for a tap handle that a brewery's independent.
Awesome, yeah. And I saw that you're a certified Cicerone as well. Do you have what's your favorite style of beer?
It certainly varies by the season. Come fall, I'm always craving German lagers, and you kind of it just feels right. This time of year, I like Belgian beers a lot, so I'll drink a lot of Belgian style beers. But really depends on time and place and occasion, and that's one of the great things about beer is there's such a wide variety that you can find something for any day, any temperature, any food. I mean, there's going to be a good choice.
Well, that's what people come in and they say, well, what's your favorite beer? We'll have 6 beers on tap. I'm like, what's your favorite beer? I'm like, I can't pick because they're like my kids. You don't have a favorite beer. If I eat a burger, maybe I want a stout, or if I some spicy, maybe an IPA or something like that. Or if it's a hot day, maybe I'll just try a lighter beer, like a lighter ale or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of dark beers that I really, really like, but in the middle of summer, after you've gone for a run, you're not reaching for something super dark and malty. And likewise, we got some snow flurries here in Denver today. I mean, today's a good day to curl up with something a little bit bigger, a little bit roastier,
a little bit darker.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm glad. I'm very encouraged by these trends. Darker beers. People are starting to trend towards dark, but we even made I made a red IPA, really good, like a mosaic. I just decided to make it red, and they brought it into bars and oh, it's not clear, it's red, darker. And I'm like, oh man. So hopefully this trend will catch, and people would kind of, just because it's dark, they just won't try it. They think it's like a loaf of bread or something like that, but it's really not.
Yeah, and some of this is on all the brewing companies too, to market, to push, to get people to taste, to get them out of their comfort zone. I think the way we did this survey was great because we didn't ask about the styles, we asked about the flavors, and I think that's a good entrance point for brewers to talk to their customers. Well, do you like roasty? Do you like malty? Do you like dark? Do you like things that kind of taste chocolatey? I mean, I think there's good ways that brewers, and we have some great server training resources that I think point to this, but can really talk to customers and get them to move outside of just what they've heard from their friends. Maybe they've heard IPA, but you can ask them, why do you really like that IPA, and maybe move them to something else. And I think there's a great journey for a lot of craft beer drinkers that they can start down if they listen to their local brewer and try some new things.
Right, exactly. Well, Bart, it's been excellent. I'm glad that you came in and talked to me about this. I'm very privileged Like I said, I always look for your emails. Oh, what's Bart saying?
Great, thanks.
And I think everybody else is doing that too, because you really take a lot of data and you make it, you really distill it down and give us some really quality stuff. So I appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Hey, yeah, that was Bart Watson. He's the chief economist for the Brewers Association, and a lot of good stuff. He's making some good predictions and looking at trends, and it's happening. Crisp. People want crisp. They want like Pilsners, lagers. I got to make some. I'm going to start making some. And dark beer, which is awesome. We have stout, we have cake, and I've talked to a lot of bars, and they're saying, yeah, people are liking dark stuff. So this stuff is happening, which is awesome. IPAs are still up there, and people love the New England style, like the juicy stuff, which is good, but there's a lot of other styles out there which are very good as well, and I'm glad that people are trending towards those, which is great. Also, low-cal beer, right? Michelob Ultra, they sound like millions of barrels. It's ridiculous. They're onto something. A lot of people want low calorie beer, more fitness, which is great. So that's our podcast for today. If you like what we're doing, please go on to iTunes. Do me a favor, rating and review. It takes a minute. Just go on. Tell a friend. Tell 10 friends. We multiply things by 10 here. By the way, I'm doing the New York City Marathon. I have a link if you want to check it out. It's on Instagram, Facebook. To donate $3,200. I got to raise $3,200 for the American Cancer Society for the New York City Marathon. So I multiply it by 10, 32,000. Why not? Right? Why not? So we're on our way. I have a couple months left. Trying to step it up. If you got, that takes 5 minutes too. Go on, donate whatever you can, 10, 20, 50. Hey, if you want to donate 30, that would help me, 30,000. That'd be awesome. Anyway, all right, that's our show for today. We will see you Wednesday. Take care.